Well, hello, friends. Today is the 4th of January, and today we'll be talking about dependent origination or paticca. But we're going to be talking about it in a way of having two benefits. One benefit is for students to understand how the mind works, because actually this is a very clear description of the processes of how the mind works. And then the second benefit is so that we can identify unwholesome thoughts, unwholesome states, so that we can make changes to it. Now, the interesting thing about paticca, or dependent origination, is that there are several places along the way where wisdom can enter, when you can see exactly what is going on and make changes. That's in fact one of the most important qualities of paticca is that it is geared around right noble effort to make a change, and that the faster the mind is, or the faster your sati is, the faster you can figure things out, then the less dukkha there will be, or none at all. Now, it's normally stated to have 12 steps. 12 steps of dependent origination, but when especially the Western mind, but the human mind wants to take one step after another, starting from step number 1 all the way to step 12 as a sequence, to where in fact there are nuances that we want to cover today that can help you understand that it's not just 1 through 12. That in fact today's teaching is going to be more of 9 steps rather than 12. And I'll talk about how we collapse some of the steps a little bit later. But always the sequence starts with ignorance, and that we are born ignorant. We don't know how to do much of anything when we're newborn babes. And so, as we are born and start being born, things begin to happen. And a lot of the things that begin to happen is that the infant child begins to do things, learn things, experience things, have feelings about things, etc., like that. And so, as we are born in ignorance and remain in ignorance in the ordinary person's life, they will continue to, let us say, pile up experiences, actions, things like this. The Pali word for this, by the way, is sankhara. And that I don't think that we have a good, solid, one-word working definition for sankhara. Every translator kind of chooses his own word for it, and so it takes quite a bit of description. One of the ways of describing it is that it's just old memories, but more so, it's also habits. And if you keep repeating the habits over and over again, they get frequented up. So maybe a good analogy would be that you walk into the city library, or maybe a university or a school library, and all of the books are no longer arranged upon the shelves, but in fact, they're just piled into the middle of the floor. And that this is how sankhara operates. It doesn't have an organization. that it just things are in a big pile. And so if you have habits, what that means would be repeated behaviors that will repeat over and over again. And you can kind of think of that as having um, several or maybe dozens of books that have multiple copies. And so if you've got 10,000 copies of one book, and you have, let us say, 100,000 books, and all of the other books that are in that pile are just one copy of that book, then the likelihood of you picking up that one book that has 10,000 copies there would be the book that you would pick up. So, in the regard of the Sankara, what we actually mean then is that, for one thing, it's both current actions, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, habits, etc., and old ones in the past. That, in fact, today, if you have an action, a behavior, a sequence of thoughts, a feeling, then that's probably going to go kind of on the top of the pile, but the pile is broad. So the likelihood of you picking up something that you just put on that pile is fairly likely. And if you start piling on a lot of stuff current, let us say by practicing the Dhamma, by practicing correctly, by staying in a very, very good state over and over and over again, that's like piling a lot of a new book, copy after copy after copy on top. And that's a very good thing. It buries the old stuff down in the past. And so this is a way of looking at Sankara as a base for how things operate. And now the next thing is going to be in the list. It would be Sanya. Vinya, which is consciousness. Now, consciousness actually is in the teaching of the Buddha, there's 6 kinds of consciousness. Besides the 5 that are associated with the external body, we also have an internal consciousness, which we'll be talking about mind consciousness in just a moment. But as we start, I want to talk about the 5 aggregates, because the 5 aggregates that the Buddha teaches about are all found within the Paticca Now, within the Sankara, there are bodily Sankaras, which are built-in things. For instance, musicians have a certain kind of Sankara built in, we would call muscle memory, which would be different than an athlete. And so we have bodily Sankaras. We also have verbal Sankaras, which has to do with the way you speak, the language you speak, the accents, the dirty words that you use are all built into that. But in fact, in the culture that I was raised in, using a lot of, let us say, off language, low-class language was very common. So as I grew up speaking like a sailor until I joined the Navy, and then I really learned how to cuss. And so, as a good little Buddhist boy, I had to start changing the way that I spoke so that I didn't use such low-class language anymore. And that means then that we can change these sankaras. Now, the third kind of sankara would be mental sankaras, which have more to do with attitudes and feelings rather than thought processes. that the thoughts that we have are generally current, but the thoughts that we have will be influenced by old feelings, old ideas, old concepts, and old attitudes. So Sankara is the basis of operation. So when we have some new consciousness, let us say, that comes in through the eye, we see something, then we automatically will want to make sense out of it. And how we make sense out of anything is by drawing on this pile of Sankara to make to be able to perceive it. An example of that is that someone who has never seen, let us say, has lived in a room for some reason their whole lives, and they go outside and they see a tree. They've never seen a tree, never seen a picture of a tree. So that's something that they've never seen before. They don't have a concept of a tree until they actually see one. And so we have, over time, pulled in a lot of data from the senses, from the ears and the eyes and the taste and bodily contact and sensation, etc., like that. We pulled in a huge amount of data that are all part of this base of Sankara, so that when we begin then to make sense out of what we see, that making sense out of it is called perception. In the Pali, they use a particular word called a Dhammarato. And Dhammarato means that we see something that's real, the rupa, and we try to make sense out of it by naming it, by understanding it, and that's nama. So we take the rupa and we make nama out of it using the Sankara as a base. Everybody does this. However, we can begin to change the way this procedure operates. Now, another way that we can think of perception is storytelling, coming to some idea or some conclusion that is a tree, or there is a monkey in the tree, or the monkey is gathering coconuts out of the tree by twisting them and having them fall to the ground, and that there is a keeper who is piling the coconuts into a pile. So this whole sequence can be seen in just a tenth of a second, but telling the story about it takes a little bit of time. So we wind up being storytellers, and everywhere we go, we have stories that we're telling. And in fact, these stories that we tell is stuff that we're making up about the moment, and we can call that thoughts. Now, these thoughts are influenced by the way that we feel and the way that we used to feel. It's influenced by our attitude currently and past attitudes that come out of the pile. So we wind up then with perception, we wind up telling the story. This story in the Pali, by the way, is called Salayatana. This Salayatana, the story that we tell, if you dissect that Pali word, it actually means internal senses. The Salayatana is like the Atana, and that you can think of it like this, that you cannot sense something in the mind that you haven't sensed on the outside. All of the senses that we have bring together stuff that's going to be then rearranged, pounded, made into a story on the inside. But that creativity is not as creative as we think. What we're basically doing when the mind is being creative is taking bits and pieces out of the Sankara base and rearranging it and putting it together in a new way. Now, the next part of Paticca Samuppada is called contact or pasa. And this pasa, or contact, is what happens. In other words, we get a little shove or a little push or a little contact. We're not contacted by what the eye see. We are contacted by what the mind sees after it's had a story told about it. And so it's the story that contacts us, not the actual stuff that we see. A good example of that would be that two observers are standing on this side of the street, and they look on the other side of the street and see someone walking. Now, each one of them has a completely different idea about the person who's walking. Let us give the example is that somebody is dressed as a nun. An old nuns have it, you know, the Catholics are very famous for having fancy dressed nuns. And one of them is studying to be a priest. And so he's very humbled and he's very grateful to see the nun, and he wants to bow and scrape and all of that. And the other one went to Catholic school and had his hands repeatedly slapped and beaten by some old nun at the school. And so when he sees a nun, he's going to have just the opposite reaction to her. Now, the reactions that these people have is based upon their memory, based upon their old Sankara, and that it wasn't the nun herself or the person dressed as a nun that made that contact. It was what they made out of it. So that contact then leads to feeling. Now, as we come to this point, I'd like to go back and redress the issue of the five aggregates. Now, the five aggregates that the Buddha talks about is very similar to the four foundations of mindfulness that you've all heard about. The four foundations of mindfulness being body, feelings, mental states, and mental objects. Well, we're going to rearrange that a little bit so that we can make five out of it. And that would be body, feelings, the sankara, the consciousness, and the perception. So the stuff that we've just been talking about wind up being this five aggregates. Now, these five aggregates, the most important reason why the Buddha talks about these five aggregates is because there is no self, there's no you there. That when we see that this is me or this is mine, that's because we're not really wise to what's really going on. That in fact, there is no self there. The self, when it is there, is a creation that happens from time to time that we'll talk about in just a moment. But first, we want to make sure that there was already no built-in self. Now, a lot of people will identify with the body, that in fact, there are a huge number of industries worldwide that depend upon people making the mistake of identifying, I am the body. What kind of businesses are those? How about the handbag industry? How about makeup? How about fashion or even the whole clothing industry? How about the workout industry? In fact, anything that people will buy to help aggrandize, increase the self, make the self beautiful, make it better, etc., like that. All of those industries are counting on the people being ignorant about who they are, thinking that I am the body. All fashion, all high heel shoes, all bracelets, all jewelry, everything. If you can see it from that perspective, you can say, wow, identification with the body is really widespread. It is enormously widespread. And that you can see each one of you for yourselves, that you often will identify with the body. I, me, mine. In other words, we don't generally say, I am thin, or excuse me, that the body is thin, the body is fat, the body is ugly, the body is beautiful. We almost always refer to it as, I am thin, I am fat. I am beautiful. I am ugly. And when people put on makeup, then they say, oh, the face is more beautiful. No, they say, I am more beautiful. And so, this identification with the body, if we can see how strong that is, then we can also see how we identify also with all of our thoughts, all of our memories, all of our feelings, all of our perceptions, all of our consciousness. We identify with the self for all of those things, to where, in fact, the reality is that they're just processes. There is the process of seeing, not I see, but there is seeing. The process of making up a story, my story, I see that way, is not correct. And yet our whole language is built that way. So that I, me, my can be seen in all of these various functions, except that the reality is that there is no self in any of those things. That's just a concept of me. But in reality, there is no self in the memories. That's just memories. There is no self in the body. It's just a body. There is no self in the consciousness. There is just merely consciousness. And not only that, but consciousness is dependently arising. It too is dependent. Everything is dependent. It depends upon what you see and what you don't see. And that when you're asleep, there's no consciousness. So when we are looking at what the mind is doing, basically that's that sixth sense door. And that's when we see my story, my belief system, my concepts, etc., like that, except it is just a story, just a concept. It doesn't belong to the self at all. Not yet. But after we have that contact, that's when feelings arise, Vedana. Now, when the feelings arise, and by the way, we have to make sure that we're not talking about, you see, in English, we have two words that may mean basically the same thing, and that is emotion and feelings. But in fact, in the Pali, we're separating those out completely from emotion and feelings. And the word Vedana is not emotion, it's just bare bone feeling. And there are three kinds. One is a pleasant feeling, an unpleasant feeling, which we could say liking. And some people will say, I like it. And then there is unpleasant feelings, which we can say not liking, or I don't like it. And then the third would be it's not liking and not liking. It's a subtle feeling, but it is a feeling. That in fact, the third kind of feeling in the Pali is called dukkha rupa vedana. And in some places, it's actually referred to as dukkha sukha vedana, which means it's either both or not quite either one of them, but it's definitely a feeling. Now, one of the ways of looking at that kind of feeling is that it's confused, it's doubtful, it's not, you're not sure. In fact, everyone often has that in the state of feeling, but they're not sure how they feel. They don't feel much of anything. This third feeling then is actually associated with ignorance, because we don't really know what we feel or how we feel, because it's subtle. And sometimes, because we don't know what to feel or how to feel, we become confused about our feeling. This is the point. These feelings, this Vedana, is where the second noble truth begins to kick in. But in fact, we could say that the entire teaching of Paticca Samuppada is nothing but a complete breakdown into the various forms of the second noble truth. What is the cause of dukkha? Now, immediately these feelings then will go from I like it into I want it, or I don't like it, I want to get rid of it, or if I'm not sure, I need to investigate or check it out or something. Now, I'm speaking in the language of I, me, and mine, to where the reality is this process is actually quite fast, and there's no self in it. There's just pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and undetermined or strange kind of feeling. Feels weird. How many of you ever heard somebody say it feels weird? You've heard that, huh? Okay. That's that third kind of feeling, is we don't know what to make of it. It feels weird. It feels strange. It feels incomplete somehow. And it's quite possible for that third kind of feeling to immediately rot into I don't like it. Now, you've probably heard the that what you don't know might be dangerous. You've heard the phrase, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. You've also heard the phrase, fear of the unknown. Well, if you don't know how to feel, then we probably are going to not like how we feel. But when we feel, if we are wise to that, we can begin to see, oh, I feel weird, except that it's not weird. It's just an incomplete or in between feeling, or liking or pleasant experience, or unpleasant experience or feeling. But when the mind is ignorant in the sense of these feelings, immediately what happens is that it goes to the next step, and that step is called tanha. Now, tanha is very important. Let's not overlook it or slide away from it. But in fact, this is the point where we begin to want. I like it, I want it. Or I don't like it, I want to do away with it. Or if I'm not sure, I need to either hate it or inspect it. So, tanha, actually, there are three kinds, and these three kinds of tanha fairly well map on to the three kinds of feelings, except that now we've got fairly well full blown into the second noble truth now. That when we talk about the second noble truth of being greed, hatred, and delusion, it actually is not just the Vedana, but it's the Vedana with the Tanha. This is why the Mahayana often speak of it as the cause of dukkha, the cause of dissatisfaction, comes from not the liking and the not liking, but it comes from attachment or clinging, and that's not true either. Tanha is wanting. It's not the full attachment, not yet. It's just a wanting. It's a thirst. That's in fact what the word tanha actually means in the Pali. The original word for tanha is thirst. Now, the suttas label three kinds of tanha: kama tanha, bhava tanha, and vibhava tanha. What do these mean? Well, kama tanha means that I like it, I want to own it, I want to get it. Bhava tanha is wanting to develop or to do it or to uh, gain something. And this is actually, that bhava is the beginning of the self. In other words, it's the creation of the self. And then the third kind of tanha is vibhava tanha. Now, bhava has the word development, and some art will show it as pregnancy, like the becoming of a baby is done with pregnancy. So you can think of it as a pregnant place of becoming. Now, I've got a little analogy for you to help you understand this. Let us say that there is a party, a New Year's Eve party, in fact. And the three states would be, I want to go to the party. Then there is party. And then the third one is, I want to leave the party. Okay, let's remember those three. I want to go to the party, I want a party, and I want to get out of the party. Now, the party is wanting to go to the party. That's the becoming. I want to become a party goer. When we're in the party, what do we do at the party? Ivan, what do you do at a party? You eat, you drink, you look, you try to take phone numbers. Right? It's a collection. This is the kama, the kama tanha, the wanting to gain things. And then I want to go to the party is the becoming. That's the Baba Kanha. I want to go. I want to become the party. And then the third kind is I want out. I want to leave. Okay. So we can see then these three kinds of Vedana map onto these three kinds of tanha. And that then leads into the next step, which is the whole show that I want to talk about today. And that is upadana. So, Pasa contact with the story that we told leads to Vedana. Three kinds of Vedana lead to three kinds of tanha, and the three kinds of tanha lead to upadana. Now, in the Pali Suttas, without talking about upadana yet, I want to add the rest of the story, and the rest of the story is bhava, which would be step number 10. Then it would be jati, or self, and then the 12th one would be dukkha. But I want to rearrange those for you so that you can get a better understanding, because in fact that state of bhava, or becoming, doesn't happen after upadana. It happens in conjunction with tanha. And so those two overlap directly. Now, the next one about upadana is that upadana is the grasping and clinging. And guess what? If you have clinging, you have already birthed a clinger, the one who clings. There is where the self is born. It is born in our desire to hold, to have. I want it. It's strong. It's not just thirst, it's dying of thirst, basically. This upadana then has both the quality of the birth of the self, and along with the birth of the self would be dukkha. So you could say it this way: if the dissatisfaction is there, who is it that's dissatisfied? That's where the self comes from. Now, within the teaching of Buddhism, we have this word anatta, and the word anatta is the word not a permanent self. That in fact, a better translation would be soul, because we think of a soul as something that doesn't change, that it is strong. It's so strong, in fact, that it survives death. And so we're not talking about that kind of soul when we talk about anatta. In fact, when we say anatta, that means no such thing as a soul. Well, where does the self come from? The self is a process that occurs. The self is something that is created along with the tanha becoming upadana. That's the birth of the self. In other words, if there's no clinging, there's nothing to be clinging. So when, let us say, our gay friend or maybe a movie actor or a lady is sitting in front of a mirror putting on lipstick with the thought of, the lips look beautiful, therefore I look beautiful, that's the tanha. In other words, she has a pleasant feeling that becomes the beginning of the self, and then the me that's born. Except that in that particular case, she's pleased with it, but then somebody comes in while she's putting that makeup on and says, "Oh, that's the wrong makeup for you." And now how does she feel? Not so good. So, I would like to tell you the story about four woeful states now. The four woeful states are, in fact, part of the upadana. When one goes into clinging, we go into clinging in one of basically four ways. Now, these four are actually uh, mutable a bit, they move around a bit. And so let's put the ones in that are the easiest to understand. And that one is the hungry ghost, the pitta. Now, the pitta is very clearly, I want it, I want more of it, I can't get enough satisfaction. It's wanting and wanting and wanting and never becoming satisfied with what we get. We can have one car or two cars, or if you look at some folks like Jay Leno, how many cars does he have? The answer to that is not enough. Or you look at some of these rich people like Jeff Bezos. How much money does Jeff Bezos have? Not enough. How much money does Elon Musk have? Clearly, for Elon Musk, not enough. It's always wanting more and more and more and never becoming satisfied. This is the full-blown woeful state of pitta. Now, the next one would be hell. Now, hell has several forms. One of the qualities of hell is that it's hot. So if you get hot, that's a form of hell. So if the person or the entity is experiencing heat, then that would be a hell state. Now, one example of that is when you recollect about the past, and that past, then you remember something that happened that was painful, except that right now, as you remember it, it's even more painful. We call this remorse. It almost to the point of wincing, that you remember something that happened, may have happened 10 years ago. It may have happened in a way that nobody else is going to remember it but you. But you remember it, and it is downright painful when you remember that. We have remorse about it. This is a form of hell. Another form of hell is when we get really angry. We're so frustrated and so angry that we can't stand it. Okay, so hell would be the quality of not able to stand it. It's too hot. It's too dangerous. It's not just dangerous. The danger has already happened, and now we're in hell. So the third one then would be the one that's the most common, and the one that's the most common is called a dumb animal. It's got that ignorance built into it, and all the animals are dumb. And the ones that we're talking about here, the ones who are often the most dumb, are human animals. We're dumb. We're ignorant sometimes. And the way that we see this is draft animals have no choice about what they do. Imagine that the horse is in a paddock. The farmer just leaves that paddock empty and lets that horse just go around and eat whatever he likes, and it's all good. And then that land is sold, or the farmer dies or something, and the new owner comes in and he puts a harness on that horse, puts a plow behind that horse, and makes the horse plow up his own pasture so that the new farmer, can then plant stuff that the horse is not ever going to eat. This is the tragic story of the horse, and everyone who has a job is living out that, especially when you don't like. You do what you're told to do, but you don't like it. And not only that, but you're not getting the benefit out of what you're doing. This is the woeful state of a dumb animal, and I would suggest that everybody here goes through that dumb animal state dozens of times during the day until you begin to see it. Then, when you begin to see it, what that means is that you stop doing things that you don't want to do. Stop doing things that you don't like. Just stop. That doesn't mean to stop the activity, it means stop the don't liking. So you can keep the same job, but now what you do, you like doing it. There's a big difference. And in fact, taking the example of a software engineer, if he does not like the job, does not like doing the work, then his code is not going to be as good as if he's enjoying the heck out of the job that he's doing. He writes code he likes, and now he's in a pleasant state. But most of us are often in a place, even software engineers who sometimes like what they're doing, a lot of the times they don't. Maybe he just wrote the code and now he's trying it out, and it gets his, let's say, a syntax error, and immediately he goes into not liking it. So this is the dumb animal state. Become aware of when you are doing things that you don't like to do. Maybe the right thing to do for that software engineer when he gets a syntax error is to get up and walk away. Come back to that syntax error when he can happily take care of it. But oh no, most of us are going to grumble and moan and feel bad while we're fixing that syntax error. And now the fourth kind of woeful state is referred to as the Asura. Now the Asura are lesser gods. They're very much like the Titans. And we have two ways of looking at the Titans. One of them is that they're all dressed up for battle, but they don't want to go to battle because all the gods that they would be battling with are better at battling than they are, even though they're dressed up for war. So what that means is fear. We're ready to go, but we're afraid to go. Going back to the story of the party, people who will go to the party and then sit at the side of the party, the wallflowers, they call them, people who are not they're at the party, but they're not partying. What have they got on their mind? They want to go. They want to leave the party. They don't want to be here, and yet they sit here at the party. All right, so that's got the dumb animal quality, but it also has the quality of being afraid to go party. So there's another aspect of the Asuras, and that is they do go to battle. What does that mean? In our lives, we go to battle in the sense of we argue with people, we feel better than they are, we win for other people to lose. In other words, we like what we're doing by harming other people. So this is the Asuras. These are the four woeful states that we can often get into, and all four of them have the quality of dukkha, dissatisfaction. It's painful. Okay, so today what we have talked about is that the 12 steps of dependent origination actually collapse because things are happening more complicated than just step 1 through 12. That often things are kind of mixed. One example is that consciousness can be consciousness of the story that we're telling. So, in that regard, we use consciousness in two different ways. One would be I consciousness, and the other kind would be mind consciousness. Now, in philosophy, they almost always use the word consciousness as this salayatana, this other kind of consciousness. But the Buddha makes sure that we are going to be using the consciousness as a word for any kind of input, the input that we have, which would be from the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the touch, and the mind. And so the consciousness grabs out of the mind and then it processes it again to come up with an embellishment or maybe a brand new story. And so this Paticca Samuppada is not a direct path. And you can see that there's a lot of mixture in there. Now, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talks about it in the sense of wisdom at the point of contact. In other words, if we are wise to the story, if we can see the story that we're telling ourselves as a story, not as my story, not as the truth, not as what we think is right, we're not attached to it, but with wisdom we can see that it's merely a story. If we can see that, then we can begin to control the way we feel. In other words, you can feel the way you want to feel by merely telling yourself the right kind of story. If you want to feel like X, then tell a story about X. That story about X will contact you and you'll feel like X. This is the easy way to understand the teaching of the Buddha. Now, we can also see that most people, I'll give an example of a husband and wife are in an argument, and that one of them goes too far in that argument. He recognizes that he's gone too far in that argument, and so he'll leave and he'll slam the door on the way out. In other words, both husband and wife are already full blown into dukkha, but he woke up inside that dukkha and left that dukkha. He stormed out of the place, slammed the door, and went to cool off. So that means then, and anyone can change. Everybody can change. But in fact, what would happen if the argument continued and they didn't stop arguing? Well, one of the possibilities is divorce, but another possibility is the knives and the guns come out and somebody gets shot or killed. Only then will then the remorse, or maybe, oh no, now I've got to go find a place to bury the body. So it is possible that someone does not wake up from an argument, but most people do. Most of us will stop the argument after we wake up. The question is, when can we wake up? Can we wake up when we're seeing we're in one of these woeful states? Can we wake up when we are seeing the clinging? Can we wake up during the time when tanha is in effect? Can we wake up at the point of feeling? Bhikkhu Buddhadasa recommends that for people to start, the right place to start is at contact, to be able to see what we're doing that leads to feelings. But the Buddha, especially Sariputta, talks about it in another way. And that is that if we can begin to see the storytelling, then we can change the story while we're telling it. If we change the story at perception time, then the story will give wise feelings. because we have wisdom at the point of perception. And if we are fast enough and wise enough to leave consciousness as merely consciousness and not tell a story about it, then that means that in that regard, no story winds up being no feeling at all, or the end of feeling. The end of the storytelling means the end of the story, which means now the end of feeling. And this end of feeling is not the same as that feeling that is small, not understood, has qualities of mixture or both, has the quality of confusion. Now, when the perception stops, we can stop feeling altogether. Now, this can be done in first jhana. It does not require that you spend all of those years sitting, going deep into meditation so that you can begin to see perception. You can just get quiet enough to start looking and start seeing how you make up stories. You can see that perception. Once you see it, you can begin to control it all on your own. So, this is actually the teaching of the Buddha that is quite useful. Can you see what you're doing? Can you see your storytelling? If you can tell good stories, then the Sankaras will wind up having a lot of good stories in the Sankara, which means in the future, when you begin to perceive stuff, you'll begin to perceive with better stories. And so it's an accumulative effect. It has a skill built into it. The skill of how fast are you? Are you fast enough to see yourself telling stories? Or only fast enough to see the story you told? Are you fast enough to not start grasping and clinging that you can leave it at the state of liking? And in fact, there's that old story about Achan Samedo and Achan Cha were at a festival, and Achan Cha asked Samedo when there was a bunch of young Thai women all dressed up, and Ajahn Chai asked Samedo about that, and he says, "I like it, but I don't want it." That means directly that we have a choice of feeling that we like it without going. In other words, I like the party, but I don't want to go to it. I like the idea of a party, but I don't want to go. So we can change at many different places, and the most deepest place that we can change would be at that place for perception. In other words, sankara, you can make new sankara, but you can't change the old one. But if you see the old one and you start to remorse, you can stop immediately that remorse. You can come right out of that hell immediately. And the way to do that is by telling a new story. And what would the new story be? Well, I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore. Well, I'm really glad that I'm here now. Things are really good right here. Why should I think about that old story? So, Ivan, you got your hand up. You got a question. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when you said it's not about improving or changing the old sankara. It's just toss them out immediately, um, and with the wisdom to know that hey, you can build a new sankara or something like that. I thought that was interesting because yeah, it is subtle.
Yes, we can change if we can see what we're doing. If we can remember to look, we can see that that old painful feeling is just an old painful feeling and you're okay right now. Well, isn't it great? I don't have to even think about that time.
Yeah, I really appreciate how the word abandon has been used so much in the Pali language. Like and also not abandoned, like oh Sankara abandoned. Like I really like that. Like go straight to it.
Well, we can't abandon the senses. Who wants to go blind? I mean, if you had a choice, if I'm going to be an arahat, but I've got to stop being able to see, nobody's in for that. It's not the eye that we abandon, it's the storytelling that we abandon. It's not the Sankara, it's not the past. We can't change that, but we can abandon our attachment to it by changing the stories that we tell ourselves about the past. So we can change. That, in fact, there are 4 right efforts that we can apply at any of these points. When you're in that state of remorse, you can throw that remorse out by saying, oh, that's in the past. I don't need it anymore. I can stop cultivating that unwholesome thought and memory and cultivate a new story right here, right now. Wow, isn't it great? I don't have to do that anymore. Well, I'm really happy right now. I don't have to remember those old bad things that happened.
I
And
was
so,
I was thinking real quick, like in a lot of modern psychology, they don't really use the word abandon. Like it it almost like in a conventional term that sounds very extreme, but like in the Dharma, we do use that a lot. We do use the word abandon and cultivate so much. Yeah.
right. Well, we can abandon feelings. We can abandon our tanha. We can even abandon the stories that we tell, but we don't want to abandon consciousness. We can't abandon sankara. There's no reason to abandon the body, but we can make changes to the way that we feel. So, Timo, what do you think?
Thank you. Always, always good to hear about Pachita Samuppada because for me it's complicated. Every time I hear it again, I feel like I get it a little bit more. It's always good, always good. It's always fitting. It's always timely, and so on. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Well, that's a better story you're making up now than the one you made up 30 seconds ago that is complicated. Do you recognize that that's just a story you made up?
Yeah, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
There's another story you could make up, and that's the story that I made up. This is the way the mind works. Can you see how your mind works? Because your mind is not complicated at all. It's just not yours.
yeah,
It's the defilements that makes things complicated, right? Like the greed, the aversion, the delusion. Like when you have the defilements there, then things does complicate.
Well,
So,
yeah,
it's complicated when you're telling yourself stories about it being complicated, but it becomes downright insightful when you can see it. And that's what this talk is about, is can you see these various things? That stop
yeah,
telling yourselves the stories that I'm telling you and start seeing these things directly. That way
yeah.
it's not complicated at all. It's something that you're seeing directly.
Yeah, I can see stuff within that, but uh, what makes one tell the story about it being complicated is the fact that it's like these 12 things, and I can't see all of that at once. I I can for example, it makes more sense to me that we can see at the point of contact, we can investigate the story we are telling ourselves, we can see the relationship between the story and the feeling, but but seeing all these links and the connections between all of them, it's like seeing 24 things at once, and that's for me that's an overload. Uh, but I guess in this sense, paticca samuppada is also a concept, and it's made up. And
Okay. Um, by the way, can I ask you, where do you live? Do you live in a city?
no, Not anymore. No, I live in a small village.
A small village. How many people are in that village?
Not sure. Maybe 1,000, maybe less. I don't know. I've
1,000.
just moved here.
Wow, I bet things get really complicated there with 1,000 people sometimes.
I don't know.
The point I'm making is that don't look at it as complicated about the 1,000 people, but recognize that you can see one person at a time, one by one, as that person passes into your field of vision, is one by one as that person approaches you. You don't have to do the complexity of all 1,000 people in that town. The same thing is true about Paticca Samuppada. You do not have to try to gather all 12 steps in your mind at one time. In fact, we've already seen it. It's down to 9 now, and 5 of them are the aggregates, which makes it pretty simple. The question is, can you see them one at a time? Can you see when you like something that you like it? Can you see when you like it that you want it? Can you see that when you want it, you can go so far as I've got to have it, and there's that I that is created. This is the whole way of looking at it, is one at a time, one by one as they occur. And then it's not complicated at all. It's, I see you.
Yeah. Can I ask one more question? Sorry.
Yeah, go right
Um,
ahead. I'm listening.
well, I thought about the story. It seems to me that the story has all that stuff already built in. And that's why it makes it a story that influences feeling. Because like it seems that in the story usually there is the self. There is the self with aversion to stuff that is built into the sankharas and wanting stuff and all that. So for me, everything, for my understanding, everything collapses in there, and I can see it.
Mhm. Yes,
Yeah.
that's the important point, is even the story is not yours until you cling to it, until you make it my story. Before, it's just a story. It was just made up by a process. So it's not my story, it's just a story until I cling to it because I like it or I hate it. And so everything one by one as they occur, you can gain it by looking. One place to start looking is, how do things contact you? How does your story contact you? Another place to look would be, how does that create a self? Where does my self come from? It comes from the upadana, comes from the clinging. Then the best one is, can you begin to see that you're making shit up? The process of making shit up, that's the place to really begin to see it. I know that I like that. Begin to see that you're making shit up. That way you have a very good choice of making up shit you like. So, Paul, what do you have to say?
I can see that clinging to feelings, especially unpleasant feelings or mixed feelings, it takes a bit of right effort to shake it off and get back to practice. And also, I guess keeping those wholesome thoughts going and maintaining that wholesome mind state in a way helps to keep guard at the point of contact.
Right. And that's an important point, that if you are having wholesome thoughts, guess what? The story that you make up then is going to be much more likely wholesome, a wholesome story you're making up with each of these thoughts. Very good. So, Dan, what do you think?
Hear you. Dan, can't hear you. I think it's
I
the
see your
microphone.
microphone on, but your lips moving, but I don't hear you.
I think it's a distal microphone setting. Like,
Now I don't see your lips moving. All right, let's move on. What about you, Amrit? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. So the story part is very kind of I mean, on the one hand, it's also you feel also a bit stupid that in the past you were just telling yourself story and reacting to your own story. But this is also kind of a very easy way out. Just keep telling yourself good stories, and then you are making your own destiny.
Yes,
So
exactly. Those old habits begin to change. And as you change your habits, your destiny will change.
yes.
The destiny is not fixed because there's no fixed self. If there was a soul, then that soul would have a destiny. But really, the destiny is all from our habits, not from the soul. And we can change our habits by changing one thought at a time, one feeling at a time, one mental attitude at a time. We can change that story, because that's what destiny really is just a story, a long story we tell ourselves.
Yeah, in the past, I remember whenever I would wake up in the morning and then I would review kind of this was an automatic habit. I would review the last day and I would be upset all the things I have planned to do and I didn't do. But
What
now,
remorse? And all you have to do is say, wow, today is a new day and I don't have to worry about yesterday at all.
yeah, and I used to think this was like a good habit because then I thought, okay, I would be doing more things today, but it just go in the same cycle. But now I wake up and I realize automatically I'm kind of having a wholesome thoughts, and it's just a new habit now.
Yes, it's a better habit, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, Garantha, good to see you, my friend. Been a while.
It has. Good to see you too. Am
So,
I?
do you have anything to say about today's talk?
Thank you very much. It's a practice for me as well to consistently remember, and to have wholesome thoughts. So it's been good.
Very good. So, Giannis, what do you think?
Uh, how do you make new stories? If every time you pick up a sankara, it's like coming from the past. How do you make new good shit up?
With right noble effort to remember that you can make up any stories that you want to make up or not at all, rather than making up the old stories that you're in the habit of making up. Make up some new ones. Make up the story. Wow, everything is really nice right now. Everything is wonderful. Not a problem in the world. Everything is okay. All my
Yeah.
friends are here and everybody's happy.
Yeah, that's a good one. But for me, it's not new because it's coming from you. It's old in that sense. It's good, but it's still like taken from memory.
All right. Well, remember then to have happy, wholesome thoughts. Put that in your memory. So that's the first
Yeah.
thing that comes out.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. So, Amal, what do you have to say?
It was really interesting to learn about the four woeful states. Can see very frequently at work going into the dumb animal clinging state. It's also it's good to see the Paticca Samuppada as a framework to understand how the mind is working, and can see that the different parts of Paticca Samuppada, those are interlinked. They are not serially working, and can break it at any point. Any of those points, it can break it at the clinging or at any of the stages. Just what we have to do is to pay wise attention and to change the story that we are telling ourselves. The I can see that a lot of times there is like once you are in a state of clinging, mind can bring up a lot of old sankaras, can bring up a lot of old data to support to keep clinging on, and can break it there, can pay wise attention and change. Also have seen that it becomes easier. The link, the hold that those thoughts or those old things have is it reduces every time if we are breaking it this time and changing the
Break it
pathway.
becomes easier to break it again next time. That's
Yes,
true.
yes.
That's also called skill development. So congratulations that you're developing skills to be able to see how your mind works so that you can change it. Okay, so Z, what do you have to say? So Dan, did you get your microphone straightened out?
Not sure.
Yeah,
you hear
there
me?
you go.
Okay. So one thing, I don't have an understanding of the contact. I don't know, have no picture what the contact is and didn't understand it. And I wondered because the neutral Vedana didn't get a good, didn't sound so appealing in your description. So I wonder, is there a good Vedana that you would strive for?
The Vedana that you could call good, I would call wise. Wise Vedana. Wise Vedana would be, I like it, but I don't want it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So can you say a sentence or two about contact? What is the contact?
Well, the contact is that once you tell yourself a story, that story contacts you. The input, the sight that you saw is not what contacts you, it's the story that you told about what you contacted with the
It's
eye.
only stories, like inner thoughts that contact, not
Yeah,
perceptions.
that inner story, that inner consciousness is what contacts our feelings.
Right.
In other words, I saw her and then I felt like shit. Well, it wasn't the sight of her that I felt like shit. It's the story that I told after I saw her that made me feel like shit. Like she dumped me, and that's my story. She dumped me, therefore I feel like shit. But the story didn't happen until the I started the perception up, and the perception then grabbed the old story and told a new story that she hates me, right? And that story that I'm telling myself now is what contacts you now. Not that I saw her, because I could see her and then tell myself a different story. Oh, I remember her. Wow, she was really nice to me. And then we don't feel bad when we tell that story.
The contact appears every moment. There's one contact.
That's right. This stuff happens really fast. The mind is fast, oh monks. The Buddha says that the mind is so fast he doesn't even have an analogy for how fast it is. It goes like that, which means now that our sati needs to develop the skill of being fast so that we can see this stuff on the fly. And the way to get it fast is by investigating, continuing to look, continue to investigate. And so now let's try Z again. Z, are you there? So what do you have to say? Mikey, can you help me with what he said?
I did not hear anything.
Well, does anybody have any last words to say?
Dhammarato, just one last thing. I see that the fabrication also happened before the contact, right? Like, I could almost say that shit is already being made out, and the contact just amplify it.
Yeah, the fabrication, that's just another word for the sankhara. It's the
Right.
old stuff. It could have happened 1/10 of a second ago, but it's already old.
Right. Like, because I was not paying attention, the sankharas was already being built, and when the contest being made, then I'm making more shit up. So yeah, that's the way I see it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you begin to see that you're making shit up.
Right.
Start
Right.
playing with the story.
Exactly. Yeah.
You've got options here. All right.
Right.
Well, Mikey, will you take this thing and shove it?
Yeah, thank you for the splendid Dhamma talk today. And thanks, friends, for being here. There's no need to leave. You're welcome to stay and hang out and make friends with one another here in this noble Sangha. If you're watching this on YouTube, come join us here on the Dhamma Friends Discord. You can find a link in the video description. And at any point, at any time, you all are welcome to hang out in the Hangout channel here and talk noble Dhamma with one another, share something on the practice. You can also listen to these talks on Spotify and iTunes and other podcasting platforms. And we invite you as well to check out opensanghafoundation.org. You can have a look at our Sangha map. Just uploaded another Buddhadasa book as well. And there are some more fun things to play with too. So yeah, thank you, friends, for being here today. And remember, don't worry, be happy. Take care and take it easy.
Remember that. Okay. Well, thank you all, folks. I appreciate it. Stay around for a little while and meet and be friends with one another. talk over what we've talked about today. What's about to happen after I leave is the best part of this talk, is when you get to interact with your Dhamma friends here. So I'm going to go now, and we'll see you guys later. And
Thank you,
stay
Dhamma.
on. All right. So bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.